Prices at the pump affect all of us, even if we don't drive, and the rising cost of gasoline is certainly a big factor in our skyrocketing inflation, very important to most families. Meanwhile, the tragic mass shooting that happened right here in Buffalo last month helped thrust the gun debate back to the forefront as well. Well, tonight there are big developments on both of those two hot-button issues, and that's where we'll begin. The Senate overcame an initial filibuster of sorts in an initial vote to move forward a bipartisan gun safety bill. So this compromise agreement doesn't include universal background checks. It doesn't ban assault weapons. It doesn't even raise the age to 21 to purchase semi-automatic rifles. Of course, all of those enjoy majority support among Americans. But the 80-page bill does do the following. It helps states with red flag laws, funds mental health care, closes the so-called boyfriend loophole, enhances the review process for gun buyers under 21, and it helps with school security. The U.S. Senate could give final approval to this bill as early as this Saturday. Meanwhile, on the issue of gasoline, President Biden today making headlines calling for a temporary 3-month suspension of the federal gas tax. It would save drivers a little more than 18 cents a gallon, so maybe $2 or $3 for a fill-up. There are questions tonight about whether he can find enough support to get this passed. Joining us live to give us some insight on all of this is Jerry Zremski, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Buffalo News. Jerry, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you, Michael.
So let's start with the gun issue. We got to see the actual text of this bill. I mentioned it's 80 pages long. It had this initial vote in the Senate, and it got more than 60 votes, so it seems like it has enough support there. But then today you had several Republican leaders in the House and the other chamber coming out saying that they're against it. Among them, New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. She's the number 3 Republican now. So, Jerry, I wonder if the GOP kind of unites against this, is there a worry among supporters of it that if you lose a few Democrats, you're not going to get enough to ultimately pass this?
I think the sentiment, Michael, here in Washington is that in the House, this bill is going to pass. However, the Republicans on the House side are doing something that they did not do on the Senate side. They are what's called whipping this bill. They are trying to do a vote count and really trying to persuade their members to vote against it. I think what this will mean in the end will be that it will be a close vote, but it's very unlikely that you would lose the number of Democrats you'd have to lose for the bill to be defeated. Also remember that there will be a small number of Republicans who vote for the bill, even though the party is lobbying against it. Among those will be Chris Jacobs from Western New York. He just sent out a statement this afternoon praising the bill, saying that it was the right move forward. So he's going to be among those voting for it.
This bill does not include or have anything to do with restrictions on body armor, which has also become kind of a hot button issue, especially after what happened here in Buffalo. There is a separate proposal on that, though, from Chris Jacobs, who you just mentioned, and also a Democrat from our region, Brian Higgins. What are you hearing about that bill's chances? I mean, is there any increased discussion about that? I mean, it doesn't look like it's going to be looped in with this bigger bill.
No, it would be very unlikely for that to get looped into this bigger bill, because if the House were to try to do that, the bill would have to go back over to the Senate. And it's conceivable that you might lose a few of the Republican supporters if you were to do that. So this bill is going to have to go through the regular legislative process, which is laborious and long, and which often leads nowhere. Whether that will happen with this bill, it's way too soon to tell. I spoke with Congressman Higgins about it this afternoon. He said that he is looking forward to trying to build support for it and perhaps attach it to some other legislation at some point in time. But it's not nearly as ready as the Senate gun compromise is.
So, Jerry, let's switch gears now and talk about gasoline. President Biden coming out today with this proposal. It obviously needs congressional support, right? But it would cut the federal gas tax through September. So there are two kind of thoughts on this, right? 18 cents a gallon. How much of a difference does that really make when gas is as expensive as it is right now? But others would say every little bit helps. How are you reading the politics around this issue right now? And of course, critics pointing out, I mean, it was former President Obama, the current president's boss then, who previously called this a gimmick. How is it being received, I guess, at this point?
It is being received not well at all on either side of the aisle. On the Democratic side, Speaker Pelosi put out a statement that was entirely lukewarm, that did not endorse this idea at all. And Congressman Higgins sent out a statement saying he disagreed with this idea, that he was afraid that it wouldn't serve its intended purpose, that this 18 cents per gallon would end up really going to the oil companies rather than consumers. Republicans oppose it as well. So I don't see a legislative path forward for it. Perhaps there will be some momentum for it if there's pressure from consumers. But the initial reaction to this, it kind of went over like a lead balloon. So we'll see where it goes. Another important point about it is, no one's mentioning this, but I'm wondering about this. Let's say Congress approved this in mid-July, and all of a sudden for 3 months, you have 18 cents off the gallon of gas. Well, guess what? That expires, October 15th, right before the election. That's not anything any Democrat or any Republican is going to, well, Republicans might want it because it's going to bound back against the Democrats. So there's a lot of questioning, I think, about whether this is even a politically wise move.
Yeah, that makes you wonder if the White House looked at the calendar before announcing this. Maybe better to do like a 6-month pause. Obviously, that would double the price tag, but it would get you past the election. I've only got a minute left,
And in New York, that's what happened. It went past the election.
Exactly. Yeah, and in Erie County all the way through, I think, February.
Right.
I've only got about a minute left, Jerry, but I do want to ask you, some people have wondered about how this will be funded if this does go through, and whether or not infrastructure projects would be at risk, because obviously the money from the gas tax goes, generally to funding infrastructure. What about the big projects like, covering the 33 that we've been talking about that need funding?
Well, I talked to Brian Higgins about that as well, and he said that it's a concern, but I also got the sense from him that it's not the greatest concern, because it is only 3 months of funding at this point in time, vis-a-vis, the vast amount of money that would come in over the course of a year under the gas tax. But it is a possibility that things would have to be cut back. It's just a question of what that would be. But at this point in time, I really don't even see a path forward for this proposed gas tax holiday.
And covering the 33 is a project that's not happening anytime soon as
Right,
well.
that will take a long time.
It's a longer term thing. Jerry Zremski is Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Buffalo News. Make sure you always read his reporting. We're fortunate to have you there, Jerry, as a community to cover all these important topics for Western New Yorkers. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael.